Okay. So I think it's pretty abundantly clear that we're living in a very unique sort of crisis at the moment in society with the spread of this virus and the subsequent financial difficulties that are going on, right? The stock market collapse and all the rest. And so it seems to me that this is kind of a perfect storm in a way that allows our communities to take some really meaningful, impactful action to produce more fresh food for our communities at a time when there might be a lot of staple foods being eaten and storage foods getting eaten. We really need to match that with a fresh supply of vegetables so that people are healthy. I also find it interesting that this crisis is kind of geared towards having some more strategic outdoor type community actions instead of like usually indoor and events that are obviously getting canceled across the board. So that's going on for our ecstatic dance community. The permaculture potlucks in indoor spaces, we're going to be suspending those. And of course, events in school and everything else. I'm sure you guys have been watching the news. So it's interesting also that the timing of this crisis is right at the beginning of the gardening season this year, where there's still plenty of time to prep a lot of beds and produce some amazing fresh produce for the community. And so I think the goals of this community resiliency initiative or community resilience coalition is to provide some leadership in this time to help us connect with our existing community networks, as well as encourage the growth of interaction between neighbors on a neighborhood level, and have a chance to see those that want to get involved in this and are comfortable participating in whatever way they can, the ability to produce more food. So pretty straightforward goals. It's how do we effectively and safely and well organizedly, if that's a word, provide opportunity for people to produce more food with existing plots. So I'm going to switch to a screen share for a moment and just share with you guys some of the notes I've already been taking around this and an example of something that the mayor of Salt Lake City has put out that I think is a good starting point for this kind of initiative. So let me get the share going for a second. Are you guys seeing my screen okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to start by showing this little initiative by our SLC mayor. This is a little Hello Neighbor handout that could be printed and easily brought to your neighbor's doors. I imagine some people might not answer the door, they might not be home, don't know what's going on, but they can easily, this could be left after trying to talk to them. And so this is a nice little breakdown of a really good way to start to connect our communities, right? My name is this, here, happy to help if you need anything. I can pick up medications, deliver food, watch children, or yeah, for your health and mine, probably need to find a good way to keep our distance, but here to figure out solutions. Phone numbers to call, my own number that we want to put there, because we do want to initiate interaction with our neighbors, right? More information about the outbreak and just a little reminder to keep clean and social distancing and avoiding crowds in order to slow the spread of this thing. So I think this is a really good little example and maybe one that we adopt. But I do want to add another element to this, which is focused on food production. And I think that there are some pretty key areas we can focus on. So I'm going to switch to my notes for a second. This is really, I'm not super prepared because, we're just in the midst of all this and we're working together. But I think this is a good time to get more input, add to things that are missing, and get some work done tonight to prepare the handouts and prepare for an event tomorrow that we'd like to do. So let me talk about what we've been discussing for an event tomorrow. We would like to gather at the Krishna Temple Field from 2 to 4 p.m. outdoors, right? And one of my favorite farm mentors, James Loomis, is bringing seeds, especially spring seeds that can be planted right away in order to distribute. He's got quite a bit. We also want to bring 5-gallon buckets so that we can launch a composting initiative, because one of the big travesties of society is that we're throwing away 60% of the stuff we throw away could have been composted to create soil. And this is a unique opportunity. If we're meeting our neighbors, we can also provide a 5-gallon bucket and a lid and try to identify somewhere at a hub or at a neighbor that has a big enough garden spot to start to collect kitchen scraps and grow soil. When you're composting correctly, just to remind people, you can have finished good soil within 3 weeks if you're turning your stuff with composting. And so this isn't just some like harebrained, maybe we get fertility next year. This is actually a way to even prepare for the bulk of the planting, which doesn't even happen until mid-May, right? So we've still got 2 months to prepare beds, to get some spring crops in, and to start collecting compost and creating great soil, and spreading some knowledge, right? Helping people recognize that, yes, gardening can be complicated, but also it's also rather simple once you get over that kind of fear of a new thing. And we provide as much online materials, in-person resources, and help people get educated around this topic.
Michael, did I interject something about your 5-gallon bucket concept?
Sure.
Tom, I think as well as just collecting to go to centralized neighborhood composting operations, people might be interested, and it might work also to have vermiculture in 5-gallon buckets and encourage vermiculture with shredded newspaper and kitchen scraps, just as an addition there.
Yep, shredding paper. That's what I do at my house, and that provides a good source for the worms. And then, that's a good option. Are you talking about like getting 2 buckets and then drilling holes in one of them and then just making a system from there? Or how do you like to do that, Tom?
Well, right now I've got my little vermiculture in 2 nested, like large black bins, storage bins. And that works good too. Besides, but buckets, you could do a containment bucket that would keep them from going out the drilled holes, and then just a drilled small perforated lid. People could do it at home then, and it's just another way to turn the kitchen scraps into biomass for the soil. That's it.
Great. And I want to mention that, of course, there are great resources online for a lot of the things that people can start learning about. But I think it helps a lot to work within our communities, because we're going to find that we have more ability to adapt to supply chains. We have more ability to meet each other's needs and can kind of tailor our approaches to our unique community. And so something that I think is important too is if we start making, like, say, Zoom videos like this, where we go, here's how you set up your vermicompost system and where to get the worms. We can film it. We can have someone who's well researched and prepared to teach people like this, or in person. And we can even save these videos and collect it onto a cloud drive, and even have a backup drive for that. That's something I'm working on with Sam Garfield from Salt and Sun, who's a big supporter of creating media and has a good series of drives that we could save videos to. That's kind of down the road a little bit, but we, as much resiliency as we can put into this effort, I think is going to be well rewarded. So the basic goal of this, and thank you for jumping in, Tom, that was great. I think an adaptable community plan for food production. We do want to be a little bit conscious of existing emergency response measures. Now, I agree with what Darren was saying earlier about, we can really be brave and show some leadership in this and provide some organization. But there's already probably some LDS church initiatives that are kind of geared around neighborhood block coordination, and there might be some cities that are a little more on this than others. There might be some community councils that have done some work with emergency preparedness, and I just want to make sure that the spirit of this is that we add our expertise and our prioritization of food production to any existing efforts, as well as showing a coalition initiative to organize around it. I think our main goal here is to spread this word that we're doing this through our existing social networks, but then really put the focus on taking action where you live, and having the resources to start meeting neighbors, where the next step is to assess resources and capacity, right? Like this form that we would give to people would ask certain kinds of questions, like, do you have knowledge about this? Do you have tools that would help with this? Would you even have some financial support once the neighborhood knows what it needs to do? Would you want to help with some of the supplies? Are there people there that are out of work and able-bodied, that are not living with a really high-risk person? Maybe those are the people that are the low-hanging fruit of those that would want to get involved. Do you already have space for gardening? I think we should be shooting for low-hanging fruit, so people that already have existing beds that just need to be prepped, as opposed to just immediately jumping into flipping lawns. Although we absolutely can flip some lawns in the process. It just requires, you know, if we're going to take immediate action, we would need to rent like a sod cutter and a tiller to kind of establish beds really quickly. And that has a little more expense and a little more organization. But this first stage really is just assessing resources and creating a line of contact with our neighbors. Do they have a location for composting to happen if we want to decentralize some of that? I think that our existing permaculture collective leaders and community leaders that respond to this, if they're able to spend some time actually making calls to those that, I know that the permaculture collective and the air protectors have a pretty decent directory of people and phone numbers, and we could be reaching out and saying, you know, this initiative's happening. Let's spread that word and make some one-on-one phone calls and see how people are feeling about it. And always, of course, we want to stay adaptable with movements like this and learning from mistakes. But as long as we keep it simple, right? Back, assess resources, grow as much food as we can in a safe and plentiful manner.
Well,
Go ahead.
if you're pivoting towards the guilds, if I may.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I think doing a phone campaign is going to be really complicated, where if we can get people to coalesce at, you know, you and I did a lot of work last year establishing hubs, avenues, the Village Cooperative out here in Fair Park, Krishna Temple, Green Team Farm. A lot of these places have storage, walk-in coolers, places to store food and kits and medicine. And so if we get, we should do basic outreach via newsletters and text blasts, letting people know of these locations and start storing goods and items in these places where people have access. And then when people are starting to feel better and more able to meet at these locations, then we can start to launch like phone banking campaigns and stuff like that, where it's more community oriented and people are, you know, learning together, shoulder to shoulder, and you're building that community resilience, as well as sharing the tools. Because, you know, you mentioned a tiller, I have a tiller, and all of these other things.
Mm-hmm.
And that if we really start to engage people and let them know that there are hubs of communication that they can go to, I feel like people will just organically start involving themselves in the Mill Creek area, going to the Christian Temple or to Salt and Sun of South Salt Lake, or, you know, these areas where we've already kind of cultivated and established these little seeds of resilience. That would be my 2 cents. And then we can organically do phone campaigns, because I feel like reaching out to people and asking them if they're willing to call a list is going to be kind of a huge lift. Whereas if we can get people to come that aren't vulnerable, that aren't at risk of, you know, putting anybody in danger and aren't afraid of, you know, of meeting, you know, in a, I think that's kind of where we could go. Because we already have people that are meeting tomorrow at the Krishna to gather seeds and whatnot. So there are people that are willing to meet and go interact in person. So I don't think that's as big of a hurdle as we think it is. Those are my 2 cents.
That's great. I would point out that the people that decide to get involved and are willing to spread these hangers, you know, go to the doors and drop the thing for people to get involved, they're likely going to be having phone calls and interactions with their neighbors, and they'll get up to speed with the tools and the game plan fairly quickly, and then they can shift to making membership phone calls later if we want, but Darren's probably right that we don't need to like jump right into that, right? I think it's important that we are all on accord about what kind of safety protocols we're going to be honoring when we come together to garden and discuss the initiative. You know, the whole like keeping, we can talk a little bit about this as well. When one note from Darren, I want to mention the hubs that are already existing. So like he's got a large urban farm on the north side of at his residence. We've got the Krishna temple that's going to be a good place for resilience. Someone like me in Cottonwood Heights, my backyard is kind of big enough for a few people, but it's not the same level as like the Krishna farm. But this is something I'm going to be doing is going door to door in my own neighborhood, and I have enough room for composting. And I think that it's a good idea that we pick regular times for gathering, just so that regardless of communication channels, it's like, okay, at the Krishna farm, we know that you know, from 4 to 6 on Mondays and 4 to 6 on Wednesdays and 4 to 6 on Sundays, there's going to be gathering there and some work to do and farming to do. And I think it'd be good that the hubs that participate kind of pick a time where people could connect. What are your thoughts on that, Darren?
I was kind of checking my garlic that I just planted. I mean, not my garlic, my chives. Sorry. So one more time.
How would you handle like having regular times for people to be able to check in at a hub?
Yeah, I
that
think
look
that'd be
like
good.
for your hub?
I think like Monday, Wednesday nights, and Saturdays would be good, like 3 times a week. Would be really good. Like Saturday mornings, Monday evenings, Wednesday evenings, and then just go from there. Where people could pick up supplies and things like that.
Okay. Cool. I guess it'd be different for every hub, and there's going to be a little bit of some differentiation as things develop. So as far as for tomorrow's meeting goes, from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock, where we're going to be handing out seeds and talking about this, I would like to have our handouts ready to go and have quite a few of them printed in time for tomorrow, and have seeds and some buckets and lids there, and just kind of have some opportunity to talk. If we get a larger group, Darren had a good suggestion that we can break into regions, so we can keep good distancing and still be able to hear each other, right? If there was like 50 people there, it might get a little chaotic. What are the thoughts about the meeting like agenda tomorrow, I wonder?
Well, I can give like a little synopsis of the hubs, because I'm fairly intimate with it and what we plan to do as far as outreach, and then I think it would be good, even if it's a small gathering, to have people break into their regions, and I could give a little synopsis of like what we're planning to do as far as store supplies, and then start doing hanging flyers and door knocking to inform people of these hubs in their local communities, and let them know that this is a place where they can come get garden supplies if they have space to garden, where they can get food and other supplies that are donated to each hub. And if they have any for donation, they can also donate them to the hubs. And then when we break out into the work sessions, we can start to define more roles within each selective region of like what people are willing and capable of doing. And then it can be fairly organic from there. So that's what I would recommend doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I would say that anybody who, you know, meets their neighbors and does this resource assessment, we would want to have another meeting probably on maybe even Wednesday, probably give it a couple of days for people to try to get that done. And then we can all touch bases and say, all right, we've got this data now. How do we take the most appropriate next steps? And there's going to be some, you know, we got to have some tools, we got to have some supplies in order to make sure the food's going to grow. And, you know, we got to realize that there's some education around this. We want to do this right, you know. So maybe we could talk a little bit about what should be in the resource assessment. I think knowledge, tools, any financial contribution, people out of work and able-bodied, space for gardening, and what kind of space, and is there a spot where composting could occur outdoors? Is there any other things that I've missed there, or any? I would word this probably differently to be friendly and not. What else is coming up for people as they see this?
Well, what's coming up for me is some of this stuff sounds like you have to show up in person to receive the information when we are being blasted by information that's telling us to not do that. And so what about the people that are going to be too afraid or scared by the just by the state of things right now, and they won't be getting that information due to the fact that they don't feel comfortable showing up to a space where there's going to be potentially more than like 20 or 30 or 50 people.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. So for me, and what I feel like fits the ideas here is the social distancing recommendations right now are keeping 6 feet between people.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that outdoors is a lot safer than indoors.
Mm-hmm.
And the need for fresh food to supplies justifies the effort.
Cool.
And so what I'm imagining is that when we knock on a door with a neighbor, you know, we step back to provide that 6 feet of space, and maybe they just don't answer the door, and that's fine. And then you leave the letter there, and that encourages them to reach out if they want to participate and connect. And we certainly don't put any kind of emotional pressure on anybody to participate that doesn't want to. It would be more of that, okay, I get it, like let's grow some food and connect like that.
Right.
What other safety protocols could we be talking about?
Well, we could do a Zoom meeting just to reiterate what Katie was saying. We could, it's Katie, right?
Yeah.
We could. I have a lot of people have been hit me up about doing a Zoom meeting, and we could maybe do that on Monday. So get the in-person materials of like seeds and whatnot for the people that are feeling willing to meet tomorrow at 2, and then do a Zoom meeting, and then you know, we could co-facilitate that and have the materials and just share them in the Zoom file, and let them know again where their hubs are, and basically just give them a briefing of what happened tomorrow, and then have them start to do outreach within their own text groups or whatever. If they want to do online organizing, there's different ways that they can do that. So,
Okay. I like the idea that our materials that we would be trying to get out over the next few days, we could be advertising a meeting, and if they reach out and give their email, they'll get that invite, and we can say when that Zoom meeting would be. Just details and answer concerns and questions, right? So the question would be timing on that a little bit. Like when would we, if tomorrow goes well, and I don't know, I have no idea, right? It might be that just 10 people come out. It might be that 30 people come out. It's only a day's notice. Maybe no one feels this as strongly as I do at this point. It's a smaller group. That's all fine. I don't really care. I just want to get the ball rolling with this. And I know there's lots of people within the permaculture community that's going to totally resonate with this and want to get involved. Maybe if it's not on a large scale tomorrow, maybe the following week, you know, there'd be more of that possibility. And we don't necessarily want to have these like huge outdoor gatherings here. We're trying to decentralize, trying to just kind of get the ball rolling and have useful resources to meet neighbors, assess neighborhood resiliency, and get some gardens planted. Those are, let's try and keep it simple, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, any other initial thoughts that are coming up around this?
Michael, this
Uh-huh.
is this is Dee.
Hey, Dee.
Yeah, so I just wanted to throw out there that the Dirt to Table project, which is a community project for inspiring people to plant their own gardens. We've got as of today, we've got over 9,000 seeds planted. And we have been doing this every year, but an added element to that for this year could be at this time asking our, the database that we have of people that have patronized this in the past to see if they would be willing to build another garden bed, or what space they might have to grow some extra food, and encourage their neighbors to participate. And we do that to some extent, but we could even just push that a little bit more this year. Maybe they have a neighbor that is elderly and can't garden anymore, and they could do a garden in their backyard. We did that one year and that worked out pretty well. So we've got a small group of volunteers that have been helping for the past 3 weeks, and every weekend from now until May 2nd, we've got volunteers lined up every weekend to help with the preparations for the plant sale. But again, we could add the element of the community resiliency and making a bigger push to get people to get out in their immediate neighborhoods and work on this project.
Great, great. And I think that it's good that I mean, everything you said, absolutely. I think the existing database, that's something that, Darren mentioned too. We should at least send out a newsletter to the existing email contacts we have. We don't need to get crazy call chains going quite yet, but low-hanging fruit like an email database is great. I think to Katie's note as well, if we continue to phrase this as like, this is an initiative that, Salt Lake City mayor is saying when people are worried about their neighbors and want to connect, and we're just adding a fresh food element to this process with the same types of recommendations, washing hands regularly for 20 seconds, avoiding crowds, 6 feet away from people, and we're just adding a composting and gardening element to this. So I'd like to try to create a handout that has a similar feel to this, right? It just like feels good when you look at it, which is why having someone to help me with a graphic design element once we identify all the key pieces to it would be really helpful. I also wonder if I should start, should I start a Facebook group and, just have all the community resiliency initiative, and I can post the Google form that could be the digital version of this, and we can look at hopefully a design by the end of the night that we all can basically agree on. Would it be helpful for me to do that?
I think that's a great idea, especially as we're all really looking to social media outlets as a way to gather information right now. I personally today have been having a lot of conversations with friends who are wanting to plant and start their gardens but don't know how because they've never done it. And so there's a lack of just information and know-how when it comes to this. And so I think to have one landing page to send people to where this information is available and will be updated is a really awesome idea.
Great. So how do we focus on new gardeners? Because there's probably going to be quite a few people that are like, all right, I've been thinking about it for the last 5 years and I'm ready now, right? So I'm kind of leaning towards hearing a little bit from Tom, maybe hearing from Darren. Like, I know the knowledge is here in our community, but how do we most effectively educate people?
I'm a new gardener, so I have questions and I could just ask you guys because I think that they would be pretty common across the board. I have not planted a garden before. I don't have my own compost happening here. I drop it off at the Krishna temple. So I have a lot of questions about how to start.
No, that's great. The questions guide the education response. my question is, I guess, is a Facebook group the best place for this information to be, like not just one-offs, but like, you can go back to this topic. Like that question's been answered. Check out here.
Right.
That's a thought. Is a Facebook group going to suffice for that?
What are the other options?
It's probably the best low-hanging fruit option.
It seems like the easiest one right now, and then it could also just grow and shift and transform with the movement.
Okay. Great. And then we can do things like, hey, we're getting a lot of questions about this. Would Tom or James or an experienced gardener in the group be willing?
Yeah, I was thinking about it.
Or whatever. Mm-hmm.
I have an idea that could go along with that. As questions are generated and we're asking to dip into our resource pot of people who have expertise, we could also maybe do Facebook Live events where people could actually ask questions, in addition to pointing them to other resources.
I had the same thought. The Facebook Live events are really cool. And then the people that are logging on and tuning in are the people with the questions, right? And then you record that content and then you just keep it available in the Facebook group so people can go back and rewatch it.
In addition to the question answer Facebook Lives, there possibly could be tutorial Facebook Lives that could be archived at the Facebook page that would say, well, here's how you plant a row of carrots about this deep, and get close up so they can see how you make a little furrow and plant your carrots, and then how you lumber mulch it so that don't dry out overnight. Just a quick 1.5 minute, this is how you plant carrots, and do that with several vegetables so people get the idea who've never done it before.
Yep.
It's a great idea. I was just talking to a friend before this meeting and she was telling me, like, make sure you know what things to not plant next to each other. There are things that don't grow well together. And it's stuff like that where it's like, I wouldn't know that. I wouldn't know that information.
Yeah. Excellent. So yeah, I think the Facebook group makes sense. And I assume we should just go ahead and make it public and we can start adding people to it. I do want to have like dedicated support from moderators, even if they're not experienced with gardening. I don't want to be a bottleneck to the ability for this group to grow and be useful for people. Is there anyone else in this group initially that would be willing to help me as a moderator of the group?
What does that mean, to be a moderator of the group?
You would be part of the leadership of the group, meaning that if I'm not available to answer questions, or if somebody is like bullying or inappropriate or something, that there's a quicker response so it doesn't get unhealthy as an unhealthy environment for people.
Tom would.
Tom's willing. Okay.
I would also feel comfortable with that, especially I work in the service industry. Like all of my work stuff just got like cut. Like I have a lot of time right now to devote to stuff like this. So I would like to use it. I would like to use it in a way that's going to help the community grow.
Great. And you're a great case study too, because you've got excellent people skills, but gardening's newer for you. And so this group kind of, evolve along with your education, which is great too, I think.
Yeah, I'm actually planning to make a big social media blast, because at this point my social media presence does carry a little bit of weight now, and I would like to use it to share this information and to share with people like that. I think now more than ever, it's really important that we all learn how to grow our own food and like be more sustainable people, live more sustainable lifestyles.
Great. Yeah, one of the first things we can do is post Zoom recording to the group, right? And so people that are coming in, they can kind of get some relevance through that as we're developing content.
Yeah.
And then Katie, maybe even Maggie might want to help with creating the handout.
Yeah.
That would be excellent.
Yeah, I'll talk to her about it.
Okay, great. Darren, would you also be willing to help moderate the group and provide some leadership around it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so my thoughts are I want to focus after this meeting on finishing up like what questions should be there and do my best job of like wording it in a friendly way that creates this connection and assessment. And then I'll create the group, post this recording in it, and I'll post the questions the best I know how. And then I would love feedback on how those questions land for people. Is it too detailed? Is it not detailed enough? Is it friendly? Does it, you know, so I'll get all that going. And then maybe Katie, you could take some time to see if you can find a designer that would help. Shouldn't take much time of theirs today.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good initial plan of action for this initiative. Want to open it up for any other thoughts, questions, or ideas before we stop?
I have one that
Mhm.
I think that it would be very synergetic. It might be controversial, the concept. There's a food source that's available, a high protein food source in this valley, that its existence as a unharvested food source also results in the loss of the harvest of nut crops. And so I'm referring to the fox squirrel, which is an invasive species of fairly large squirrel that I really seriously think we should advocate for people to harvest that protein source, that animal protein source. And I know from experience that 4 nut trees would then have nuts this fall for human beings, whereas the last 2 years they have had no nuts for human beings. So I think that they should be eaten.
Gotcha. I would suggest that it wouldn't be a core principle of the initiative, but that if that topic were to come up within the group as an idea, that it could definitely be discussed. But I think we're kind of like going with the pace of the collective comfortability with all of this resiliency. But it's definitely a good thought.
I'll harvest with you, Tom.
Worlds. Okay. Any other thoughts from the hive mind we've got here right now? Do people want to clean up these notes in a little bit? Do people want me to send them to everybody that's been in this group? Do you want to see them? Should I create a little Google Drive folder and put the notes in it and invite people to that? Would that be helpful?
That would be good. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That would be.
would you all please take the time to direct message me your email in the next hour or so, and I will do that as well.
Sounds good. Thanks for putting this together.
Yeah, I mean we're all just little drops, and together we're an ocean, you know, and we do the best we can. And like I said, there's probably a lot of existing emergency protocol out there that's going to be really important to pay attention to and to work well with. But we do have an opportunity as a connected community. We've got a lot of skills, a lot of knowledge, a lot of resources, a lot of heart, and I think we can do a lot towards creating a lot more fresh food for people, which is a real need at this time, and a great activity to be focused on while there's some economic slowdown, some distancing going on. So excellent. All right. One more chance for any other questions or input.
I think people are really looking to feel empowered right now in the face of so much crisis and scary news. It feels really good to have something beautiful to look forward to and put our energy into that is like making a brighter future for each other. So it's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Katie. That was beautiful.
I agree. And also, I was just thinking that as this movement expands, we're definitely going to have more volunteer energy. As people see us doing like real world things, then I think that it's going to really increase the volunteer turnout.
Yeah, how can it not?
Yeah, and hopefully, I don't want to. This has to be a decentralized movement in order for it to meet the needs of our communities, right? We can't be this like bottleneck centralized thing. We've got to really tap into that spirit of the faith in the collective consciousness to take care of them. I hope those that have been a part of this call help find ways to contribute and participate. I know sometimes it feels like, oh, things are getting done and I don't quite know where to fit in, but keep thinking about how you can fit in. Keep thinking about how we can do this together. And I know that this just makes a lot of sense. Remember to keep it simple. We're meeting our neighbors, figuring out capacity, and growing some food. Okay?
Rotating facilitation is a great way to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Decentralize.
Cool. Movement. And prepare for lots of volunteers. Okay? So, alrighty. Well, I'm going to stop the recording and end this session. And please, everybody, message me your email and try to keep an eye on that group before you go to bed tonight to give any feedback on the forums and stuff. I'll be getting some lunch here in me and then working on this for a couple hours. So, thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.